Welcome back. From confrontations to peace deals, the Pakistani government has shifted its strategy while dealing with the Pakistani Taliban. But this is not the first deal between the two sides. Back in 2004, former President Pervez Musharraf tried negotiating with the local Taliban. Then in September 2006, he signed an agreement with militants in the tribal areas of the country bordering Afghanistan. The intention may have been to drive the militants out of the area, but instead it gave them more freedom to operate. And now a new deal with the Pakistani Taliban, which is likely to draw criticism from the United States and other Western powers. Is Pakistan playing into the hands of religious conservatives who sympathize with the Taliban and Al-Qaeda? Well, the contradiction in Pakistani and American strategies in tackling the issue could be difficult to ignore. Well, still with us are our guests in Lahore, Imtiaz Alam, in Singapore, Murtaza Rizvi, and in Washington, D.C., Josh White. Mr. White, as we've said, and as Mr. Alam also mentioned earlier, this is not the first agreement we've seen. We've seen similar agreements in the past, particularly under President Musharraf. For example, in Waziristan, that only seems to have backfired because now Waziristan is constantly under fire from US drones. Civilians are inevitably killed, which only infuriates the local population and only spurs anger throughout the country.
Absolutely. And I think what we need to be watching about this deal in Swat over the next couple of weeks is the possibility of two different scenarios. One is a deal which appears to succeed, but which actually fails in a strategic sense. And we've seen that a number of times, particularly in the deals that President Musharraf struck in Waziristan, in which they bring some short-term stability, but over the long term they create a space for the Taliban to gain territory. The other possibility, which is somewhat less likely but also possible, are deals which appear to fail but actually have some value for the government. And the deal last spring in Swat was of that character, in the sense that even though it failed, it demonstrated the good faith of the government, and it allowed the government to take more action with its police and military with less public outcry because it had made an attempt to negotiate with the Taliban. This deal in Swat has some characteristics of both of those scenarios. And what I worry about is that the timing of this deal doesn't seem particularly conducive to a deal that's going to work. The government did not approach it from a strong position, and there are a number of reasons to believe that over the next couple of weeks, the differing expectations on both sides will probably cause it to fall apart.
It's interesting to hear what NATO has to say. Murtaza Rizvi, NATO spokesman James Apathurai said recently, we should all be concerned by a situation in which extremists would have a safe haven. Without doubting the good faith of the Pakistani government, it's clear that the region is suffering very badly from extremists and we would not want it to get worse. Does NATO have valid concerns?
I think it does concern me quite a bit, actually. What if, this is seen as appeasement being done by the government, which the government says it is not, and one hopes it's not. But if, Taliban can make this Swat deal work and make it a success story, then it will be seen as appeasement, and it will be seen as them gaining more ground. And so who's to stop them, and where is one going to stop them?
Imtiaz Alam, has the current judicial system failed the people of Swat? In the first half of the program, you spoke about the fact that this won't be Sharia per se, but a blend of the British system and Sharia. As things stand until now, has the current system completely failed the people? That's why many of them want Sharia.
You see that there has been, I told you earlier, that there has been a void. And void was badly filled in a very clumsy manner, while conceding to the one section of the population under the pressure of the clerics or influence of the clerics. At the moment, I think this is a tactical move. It's not going to last. My prediction is this will fail, but it will show the government's sincerity that it tried to do, bring peace through talks, negotiations, and also agree to the demand of a justice system. But they are not, in fact, interested in a judicial system, but they have their different designs. So government will be winning on the moral side of it when Sufi Muhammad or his tribals fail to deliver the peace to the government. and government is not going to implement the deal unless he brings peace, and that includes the disarmament of the militias, and that's a big toll and big order, which Sufi Muhammad can't fulfill. But this whole maneuver will help the government, will provide the government good moral ground. It will provide it a big propaganda victory, and it will provide the government justification for military action against the terrorists. And at the same time, the government will benefit from those people who are now clamoring for peace, including Sufi Muhammad, who has raised the white flag. So this is a good tactical move.
Okay.
And I don't think that, in fact, the Sharia will come.
Okay,
Swat, I don't think
let's
so.
pose this to Murtaza Razvi. Doesn't the whole situation need more than just a propaganda victory for the government, as Mr. Alam mentioned?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I mean, the government has been seen as failing in controlling the menace of this growing extremism, which seems to be claiming more and more territory in Pakistan. And now the deal comes at a time when you have not gained ground anywhere else, except perhaps in Bajaur, where you did sign a peace deal, which failed, and then you did the military action, and now you have gained some ground there. But where else? The Waziristans continue to be seething wounds.
Josh White, the United States has been relatively nuanced so far in its response to this deal. I wonder, how does all of this affect the Army Chief General Kiani's upcoming visit to the U.S.?
Well, I think that the upcoming visit is perhaps one reason why U.S. officials have been so surprisingly nuanced in their reaction to what's happened in Swat over the last few days. In general, officials from the Defense Department have been much more concerned about this development. They have very fresh memories of what happened in Waziristan and the implications of those deals for cross-border strikes against NATO and U.S. forces in Afghanistan. But at the same time, the State Department has put out some really remarkable statements acknowledging that Pakistan is an Islamic state and that these agreements are not
But behind closed doors, they're freaking out, aren't they?
Particularly at the Defense Department, a number of them are very nervous. And I would have to say, I think that they are less nervous about the content of this agreement, about the Sharia content, than they are that this might signal that the Pakistani government is actually lowering its expectations about what it can do in Swat, about how it can restore the writ of the government. That's what really worries the U.S. at this point.
Imtiaz Alam, final thoughts on the U.S.'s concern?
I don't think that there is a very serious reaction in the U.S. Rather, what I have heard on television, that they have said this is written in the Pakistan Constitution and it's not different from that. And we are keen on Pakistan delivering on war on terror, which Pakistan is committed and seems to be doing. This is what I have read. The other thing is that the Obama administration is in the process of revising its policy, the policy of Bush administration. That policy produced more terrorists in Afghanistan than it had killed. So we need a policy review, and of course, till that time, Pakistani government will have freedom of action. And what I will emphasize is a regional consensus, which we know better than the US and Europe and NATO, and we can deal these people better than the Americans and Europeans, and they should trust us, and they should help us create a regional consensus.
Okay.
And with that, on that basis, we can win over the people and fight back.
All right. Gentlemen, it's been a fascinating discussion. Imtiaz Alam, Murtaza Razvi and Josh White, thank you very much for your views, and thank you so much, the viewer, for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. As always, we welcome your comments and suggestions. You can email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye-bye for now.